Hello? Hello, everybody. Hi, buenas tardes. Good afternoon. My name is Samantha Herrera. I'm a part of the Rio Grande Valley Language Justice Collective. Mi nombre es Samantha Herrera y formo parte de el colectivo de Justicia del Lenguaje del Valle. Today, we are going to be in an experience with each other to try and create a bilingual space, a multilingual space, so that we are able to try and practice our value of language justice. So being able to get to a day where all of us can express ourselves in the language that we feel most comfortable in, so that we're able to work together. And so hoy vamos a estar juntos para poder poner en acción nuestro valor. Sí, es un valor. Nuestro valor de la justicia del lenguaje. Así es que si usted no es bilingüe, si es una persona que solamente habla el español o el inglés, por favor visítenos acá en esta mesa para recibir un equipo de interpretación. If you are not a bilingual speaker or a bilingual person who understands bilingual English and Spanish, we ask that you please pass to this table over here to receive an interpretation kit. Today's agenda will be in English and Spanish, so if you don't understand both languages, we encourage you all to pick up a kit. La agenda de hoy va a ser en inglés y en español, así es que si usted no entiende las dos lenguas, por favor les invitamos a que pasen a la mesa. Okay. Y es todo. Solamente si usted va a estar hablando y está hablando demasiadamente rápido, vamos a hacer un señal así para que por favor hable más lento, así para que suba su voz y así para que se repite. Okay? And we're going to be using some signs today together in the room, and if you all could help me with those. If someone is speaking too fast, we're going to do this. And if people can pay attention to me wherever I am, if I'm doing this, everybody can help me so that the speaker can see that they need to slow down. To speak up, we're going to use this. And to repeat what they said, to do this. Okay? Thank you all so much. I'm going to pass the mic to the agenda.
Muy buenas tardes a todos. Les quiero dar la más cordial bienvenida a nuestro gran evento Derechos para Todos y la carrera al Senado en nuestro distrito número 27. Yo soy María Cordero y soy la especialista en compromiso local aquí en el Valle del Río Grande con la Unión Americana de las Libertades Civiles. Quiero presentarles a mi compañero de trabajo, Vicente Martínez, quien va a introducirse a sí mismo con ustedes y también les va a dar una pequeña introducción de nuestros moderadores para nuestro magno evento. Nuevamente, bienvenidos sean todos.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. I'm surprised, or I'm not surprised, but I'm so glad there's a lot of people from everywhere in District 27 attending. I am Vicente Martinez. I am the RGV volunteer coordinator. We at the ACLU believe in the rights for all people, and we aim to protect everybody's civil rights. By being here, you're being civically engaged. Our community is diverse, beautiful, and has been able to overcome everything that's been thrown out to us. The Rights for All Candidate Forum gives residents from Senate District 27 an opportunity to be part of the a conversation with candidates on both sides of the aisle. So we're going to be able to find out where there are, sorry, I apologize. The opportunity to be part of the conversation with candidates on both sides of the aisle about how they are, who they are, and how they're going to represent us if they get elected into the Texas Legislature. Too often, we pay more attention of what is happening on national level because it gets so much attention when what is happening at the state and local levels has much more direct impact onto us. So joining us today, Ms. Stephanie and Edgar Saldivar. They will be our moderators for today. As Maria mentioned, I'll be giving a small introduction regarding Stephanie and Edgar. Stephanie Dominguez is a nonprofit professional living in Brownsville, Texas. She is responsible for all community engagement efforts in the Rio Grande Valley, She manages the largest portfolio of organizations in the Community Engagement Department. Stephanie has committed herself to advocate for environmental justice, LGBT rights, immigrant justice, as well as voter rights. She assisted with voter registration, education, and engagement efforts as a deputy registrar with Texas Rising and as a volunteer with Baretta Progressives. Her heart lies in the fight for reproductive justice and universal comprehensive health care. These issues have guided her advocacy and fundraising efforts over the last decade. She is committed to working diligently. She is committed to work hard to ensure people have the access to basic human rights. In her spare time, Stephanie enjoys running, board games, and camping. So, and now, please help me welcome Stephanie Dominguez with a round of applause to the stage. Now let's introduce Edgar Saldivar. Edgar Saldivar is a senior staff attorney with the ACLU. He defends civil rights and civil liberties of ACLU clients in high-impact litigation in state and federal courts. His practice is focused on immigrant rights, voting rights, and free speech. Edgar is a native of Pasadena, Texas, and a son of Mexican immigrants. His mother was a migrant farm worker, and father worked in a slaughterhouse. His work has driven him by deep passion to serve the poor and marginalized. In 2017, Edgar was the only Texas attorney and sole representative of the NGO sector honored by the Hispanic National Bar Association with its prestigious Top Lawyers Under 40 Award. Edgar graduated cum laude from Harvard University, received his JD from the University of Houston Law Center. When Edgar is not fighting the government, Edgar is an urban farmer as well as an avid gardener. Help me welcoming Edgar Saldivar to the stage.
Hi, good evening. Just a quick announcement. Senator Lucio had confirmed attendance for this evening's forum. However, his office reached out to us earlier today to inform us that he will not, in fact, be attending tonight. When we spoke with the senator's office, we offered to restructure the order of the forum to accommodate a schedule, but we were not able to do that. We're disappointed that you, the voters, won't have an opportunity to hear directly from Senator Lucio this evening. The senator's office did say that he might be willing to answer questions written, so we want to encourage members of the audience to write your questions on the note cards that you've been provided, or you can tweet the senator directly. We will do our best to engage with his office to provide you those answers. So that's the announcement on the change in the forum tonight.
Please welcome our first candidate, Vanessa Tijerina, to the stage.
Hello.
Vanessa, you have 2 minutes. Please introduce yourself and explain why you are the best person to represent this district.
My name is Vanessa Tijerina. Thank you all for coming, and thank you the ACLU for putting all this together. I've been a nurse for 20 years, my entire adult life since I was 19 years old. I don't think there's another candidate running that has a better grasp of healthcare or that has treated diabetics or this particular demographic for the last 20 years I have. I'm the only STEM candidate that's running. I have a biology degree. I understand the need for our legislation to reflect our science and the research that we have gathered over all these years. I found out through my son and through struggles that we had that Texas was failing our special education children. And in my opinion, any society that fails their most vulnerable, well, you can imagine what the rest of us are going to go through. And this matters. And because I had to fix that problem at the state level, and because I had to bring the United States Department of Justice down here with my repeated calls and my repeated letters, I said, you know what? Since I'm already doing that job, then I might as well just run for the seat. That's why I feel that I could do the best for this job.
Thank you, Ms. Tijerina. Now, with these next 3 questions, you will have 1.5 minutes to respond. In 2016, you ran for the as the Green Party candidate in the U.S. House election. You recently ran to be mayor of Raymondville. Your voting history shows that you have only participated in Democratic primaries. Can you talk about your decision to switch to the Republican Party for this Texas Senate seat run?
Yes. I ran initially when I started getting into politics. I've been a Democrat my entire life because that's the party system that reflected my values. And so whenever I saw everything that was happening, the corruption, everything, and I decided that I had to run for United States Congress, I wanted to set myself apart. And I wanted people to know there's a different kind of candidate and that it wasn't going to be a Democrat. And I did that. And I was able to break records as a Green Party member. And I needed to break records as an alternative third party so that if in the future I ever had to choose one of the 2 major parties, that people would understand that I'm more about the values than I am about the party. The other reason that I picked the Republican Party was because the Republicans are in power right now. And we all know that. The Democratic Party, I'm sorry, but the candidates that they are producing are not enough to overcome the stronghold that the Republicans have. And if I am truly a servant of the people, and if I'm truly about the value system and the people and not the party, well, party affiliation doesn't matter. And my entire life is a testament to my value system, no matter what label is behind my name.
In your professional life, you are a registered nurse. In that position, have you seen any impacts on accessing abortion care as a result of policies passed at the Texas Legislature? Do you believe that people should have the right to receive an abortion?
I'm an LVN, I'm not an RN. I've been an LVN my entire life. I need to make that clear. I follow a code of ethics, and for 20 years, I need to make sure that that's clear. Abortion, I am for women's rights. I have a problem with men over all these decades telling women what to do with their bodies. We do not control the reproductive rights of men, and I don't think that the reproductive rights of women should be controlled either. I think that this is a very personal decision, and it shouldn't involve diplomacy. This is between the woman and herself, and that's it. And that's where I'm at on that. As far as accessing, yes, I've seen the changes that have occurred, especially with the recent changes that Texas has had. I've seen women relent and have to bring a child into this world simply because they couldn't drive to an abortion clinic or they couldn't afford it. Had the abortion clinics not closed locally, perhaps they would have been able to make the decision to wait on expanding their family. But yes, because of those kind of struggles, I've seen the difficulty.
Thank you. If given the chance to serve the community, how would you address the border crisis? And please give examples of specific policies that you would support.
The border crisis right now, the crisis that I see, because I don't see people coming over here and invading us, I really don't. I don't see a fence or that we have proven is impenetrable, not able to be crossed over or climbed, not able to be, not able to overcome that particular wall or border wall. I feel that we need to think of a good and comprehensive legislation to be able to give security to the people living along the border, but so that people also feel that there still is passage and that their people are still able to come over and seek asylum in the way that they're allowed to. Well, actually, they're not really allowed to right now. I would change it so that we would have more reasonable, practical, and logical solutions to our border crisis.
And of those solutions, what specific policies would you support?
I would support a border wall only if we knew that it was impenetrable, and only if we knew that the border violence increased to such a degree that we're being invaded, and that we need something like that.
And I'm going to introduce a community partner of the ACLU of Texas, National Latina Institute for Reproductive Health. La pregunta.
Buenas tardes. Mi pregunta es, ¿cuál es su opinión para la expansión del Medicare?
¿De la expansión del Medicare?
Sí.
Medicare. I'm sorry. Medicaid. First of all, I feel that we should have universal health care, period. That that's a federal issue. I feel that Medicaid should be expanded. I feel that it's really difficult for people, especially here in the Rio Grande Valley, to get certain kind of help. And I've seen these families try to get the help that they need down here, and a lot of times they have to go outside. And the things that are in place right now with Medicaid will help you with your gas, will help you how to get there. It's not that easy, and it's a lot of red tape. And more often than not, I've seen parents and people give up. So that particular legislation is not effective enough to be able to have these people utilize Medicaid without any problems. It needs to be made so that people can access their doctors and specialists a lot easier and to be able to get there.
Thank you, Ms. Tijerina. And now we're going to have another candidate come up.
Thank you.
Hey guys, so we're having a fire marshal issue. So if you are standing, I am gonna have to ask that you either go outside into the lobby and view the forum from this way, or we have cleared this whole side lobby as well. We don't want this forum to get shut down. We have worked very hard on it. So if you will please just, if you are standing, just go to the back or the side. Thank you so much.
Okay, we're going to give people a minute to move so that we can continue with the program.
I guess this is a good problem to have, right? Yeah, you're overcrowding, you're overflowing room. That's always a good thing.
She's media, yeah. Okay, now we will welcome the Honorable Ruben Cortez to the stage. Mr. Cortez. Now, like the prior candidate, you will have 2 minutes to please introduce yourself and explain why you are the best person to represent this Senate district.
Good evening, everybody. First of all, let me start off by saying thank you to the ACLU for putting this forum on this evening. I think a lot of people in District 27 understand the need for why we need change in this Senate district. You know, as someone who's a son of 2 migrant parents who grew up in a home where we were always taught to believe that if we put our mind to anything that we wanted, that we can accomplish it. If we worked hard enough for something that we wanted, that we can achieve our dreams. When I ran and won on the Texas Board of Education, I had an opportunity to impact the state and how our students learn what they're learning, to impact the importance of bringing more minority presence into our curriculum. But while I'm there, and working and taking these big fights and winning unanimous battles, mind you, against a very polarizing environment where we have 10 Republicans on our board, 5 Democrats, we're able to win these major battles unanimously by reaching across the aisle, we're able to identify these common threads that bind us, and we're able to do these things. But while you're there, you also get to see what goes on across the street in that pink building. And as I've been able to sit there through different legislative sessions as a member of the Board of Education, watching what goes on at the state capitol, and I see what our state senator has done in our name, in the name of our vote for the last 30 years, I can tell you that it's very concerning to me. And so when you ask, why do you think that I'm the best candidate? Well, I'm one candidate that has a proven track record of working at the state level, working across the aisle, winning major battles. Plus, I'm the only candidate that's been elected in this Senate district 3 times already. The district that I currently hold is 17 counties, and I'm running for a 5-county seat right now.
With these next 3 questions, you will have 1.5 minutes to respond. The Texas Senate, by its very nature, requires elected officials who can work across the aisle. Can you point to any policies you've enacted during your time on State Board of Education that demonstrates your ability to work in a bipartisan manner and enact meaningful change?
Sure. I mean, from the long-range plan to public education that we put together. When I arrived on the Board of Education, Texas didn't have a long-range plan in place since the year 2000. We were able to get one of those done. We went across the state and asked everybody from students to parents to stakeholders. That's one. We put together a new dyslexia handbook that involved teachers from all across the state of Texas. And one of the big things that we were able to get done is we were the first and the only Board of Education in the country to have approved a Mexican American Studies course, unanimously, I might add. Even the hardest of Republicans on the right, on the very day of the vote, voted with us. We got a 15-0 vote. And this is a testament of the work that we can do if you simply work hard enough with your colleagues and impress upon them the importance of doing the right thing for all Texans.
Thank you. The 2017 legislative session saw multiple pieces of legislation introduced that targeted members of the LGBTQ community, particularly those who identify as transgender. In that same year, Kimberly Avila, a transgender woman from Brownsville, went missing and still has not been found. An ACLU of Texas poll here in Senate District 27 showed that 71% of residents are in support of lawmakers passing legislation that provides more protections for LGBTQ Texans. Knowing that the majority of your constituents would support LGBTQ rights, can you explain why you supported legislation that treats same-sex couples differently than opposite-sex couples, and legislation like the unpopular bathroom bill?
So I didn't support the bathroom bill. I'm not sure if I read. I'm not sure if I heard your question correctly. But
right. The reason is, why did you oppose it?
Oh, why did I oppose it? Because Texas has no place for hateful legislation like that. You know, I tell my kids all the time, I'm a father of 4 young kids. I'm married to an elementary school principal, and I tell my kids all the time, the way my parents used to tell me, that we want you to grow up in a community that values and respects you. I tell that to my children all the time. You know, when I ran for this board that I serve on today, I told everybody, I want what you want. I want the best for my kids, right? This is why we do what we do. That's why we wake up every morning. As parents, we want better for our kids. As grandparents, we want better for our grandkids. The next generation always wants better for the next. You know, but to see this type of hateful legislation like what you're referring to in 2017 coming out of the Texas Senate, and there's a common theme, and we didn't even talk about it. This legislation makes it out of the Senate by 1 vote. Anybody care to guess? That person's absent here today, but this legislation makes it out of the Texas Senate by 1 vote. Over and over you see this. This is a common theme. But yet there's billboards out there that say we're all in this together, but what does he mean when he says we're all in this together? Because he obviously doesn't mean our LGBTQ community, because he continues to turn his back on them. You know, we need a senator who's going to focus on everybody's rights and focus on doing the right thing for every Texan, to meet them where they are.
Okay, thank you. Now, if elected, how would you vocally oppose further expansion of immigration detention centers, both operated by the government and by private companies, in Senate District 27 and in Texas?
Well, there's no doubt we have a lot of them in Senate District 27 today. We've seen the Valley as ground zero for a lot of this in national news. You know, we had an opportunity to tour schools recently with one of the middle school association presidents from another state, and he wanted to come down because everything that he sees on the news in that state shows him that this is nothing but a war zone. So we took him to schools like Garden Park that butt up right to the wall. And we're like, this is not a war zone. This is one of our higher performing schools in the district, you know? And yet people outside of this region don't view us that way. And so we need a senator who is not afraid to stand up to the leadership in Austin, who won't just simply rubber stamp Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick's every whim and actually do something in support of our region. You need a senator who's not going to support that $800 million that is being used to militarize our border by Department of Public Safety. There's a video out there. If you haven't seen it, I challenge you to watch it. Hunting humans on Texas highways. Happened right here in South Texas. And this is part of the hateful policies that this Republican administration, joined by our current state senator, by supporting every whim of Dan Patrick, and we need to stop these practices.
How do you think that candidates and elected officials can make it clear that abortion access is a part of comprehensive health care, and how can you work to help destigmatize abortion?
You know, for starters, I'm a father of 3 daughters. I got one of them with me in the audience today. Everybody else is out with other after-school activities and chess practice and all kinds of things that we have going on. And like every family, there's busy lives. But what I don't want, and I tell it to my kids all the time, when I tell them that I want them to grow up in a community that values and respects them, that includes their decisions on their health choices. My daughter's decisions on what she does with her body shouldn't be made between her and her state senator. They just shouldn't. Her choices are hers and they're hers alone. And we need to respect that. And I can't be any more plain about what that means. We just cannot intrude in a woman's right to decide whatsoever. They need to have complete autonomy with their body. It's their body, it's their sovereign right to do with it what they want.
And just to clarify the question, it's how would you work to help destigmatize abortion? What would you do to provide that access that you're talking about?
Well, you talked about Medicaid earlier. One thing I would do, I mean, we've left almost $10 billion of Medicaid dollars on the table. This Medicaid expansion should have been possible. There was an article that came out in the Rio Grande Valley Guardian, where our current state senator, who is absent today, said, we need somebody with clout, we don't need a freshman. Well, if he's got all that clout, why didn't he fight for this almost $10 billion? 70% of the Indigent Care Fund is being used in Hidalgo and Cameron, which make up 91% of the vote in this Senate district, yet he's not doing enough to fight for it. And if we fight for this, we create an opportunity, we create money that becomes available to allow for safe access for women.
Thank you. Now, a reminder for the audience, you do have note cards for questions that you can submit that we will ask the candidates afterwards. So I'm just reminding you to please, if you have questions for the candidates, please see Blair waving her hand, and she will provide you note cards to write your questions. Now, we're going to introduce another local partner, Frontera Progressives, who will have a question also for Mr. Cortez.
Hi there.
So Texas has one of the lowest voter turnout rates in the nation. Texas also has some of the most restrictive laws regarding voter ID and voter registration. And compared to other states, Texas does very little to provide voters with information that they need in order to be able to vote. So what kinds of measures would you support in order to help improve voting in Texas?
One thing we can do is end this practice of not allowing people with a criminal record not to vote. I mean, that's something that should stop immediately. I would be in support of that. I think we need to get rid of our lieutenant governor and our governor in Texas so that we can get a democratic leadership in this state that's going to be more mindful and more willing to do more. But absent that, you need to send a senator who's not just going to rubber stamp everything. I mean, we were very close to approving this Secretary of State. You know, the fact that organizations and leadership in Austin weren't sure how our state senator was going to vote, whether or not to confirm this man after he brought him down to tour this region, you know, is a telling sign. Unfortunately, he wasn't confirmed, but they didn't come up with that until like 1 or 2 days before that final day came. And so getting the right people in office that are going to fight and sit with organizations like the ACLU, Frontera Progressive Democrats, Tejano Democrats, any other organization that wants to figure out a way to create access and allow for voting to happen, we need to meet people where they are and give them the opportunity to have mobile sites wherever we can, not reduce them the way they've been doing lately.
Thank you. And now we're going to have our next and final candidate come up to speak. Okay, let us welcome Sarah Stapleton Baretta to the stage. Ms. Stapleton Baretta, you have 2 minutes to please introduce yourself and explain why you are the best person to represent this district.
Great, thank you. My name is Sarah Stapleton Baretta. I'm not a career politician. I'm a mom of 3 little kids. I'm a lawyer, and I'm a woman who's really needing to make a change down here. So, I'm born in Harlingen, raised in Brownsville, spent all my life here, went off to school, came back, was a teacher for a year, realized that teaching is probably the hardest job on the planet, so then I went off to law school and ended up getting my law degree. Now, why? You know, I just said I'm not a career politician, I've never run for anything, so why am I here? And this is the reason. About a year ago, I was working real hard for about a year on a death penalty case. And it caused me to do some soul searching, as you might imagine in that type of circumstance. You know, and I took some time off afterwards and I tried to figure out, okay, why is it that this person that committed this horrific crime in this situation, and why do we have an innocent victim that's in this situation? We're failing somehow, something is going wrong. So I started doing research, and I'm trying to figure out what our state legislators are doing and what the state is really handling and how they're handling it. And I was horrified. I couldn't believe the decisions that had been made for us. I couldn't believe the decisions that were made that affect us on our daily basis. You know, I realized that what our current senator doing has really been voting in favor of these Republican discriminatory bills, time and time again, that hurt the LGBT community and hurt the women and really don't enhance our lives down here. So from there, I started looking at a vision. And if you will, I'd like you to use your imaginations with me. And I'd like you to imagine a Texas that has health care for us. And we can take care of our abuelitos and our brothers and whoever else is out there. Sorry.
Yeah, it's okay.
Thank you.
For these next 3 questions, you will have 1.5 minutes to answer.
Okay.
You are not a politician, you are a business owner, a lawyer, and a community activist. How do you think your outsider status will inform how you represent your constituents, especially those members of the community traditionally targeted with discriminatory legislation, like women and members of the LGBTQ+ community?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think it's exactly what we need. We don't need a career politician. We've had that for the past 28 years, and how much good has that done us? We need somebody that's on the ground with the people day in and day out, answers their phones, answers the hard questions, answers the messages, and is with you, not up in a fancy chair, God knows where, making decisions for us. Look, each one of you in here have specialized knowledge of something that I don't have. So how do I get that specialized knowledge, and how do we actually grow to make something better? We talk. You teach me. I teach you. It's a community effort that has been lacking for all this time. We don't need a politician.
Women in jails and prisons have unique needs when it comes to rehabilitation, but most jails and prisons are designed for the predominantly male population. Would you support adapting programs and policies in jails and prisons to meet the needs of women who are incarcerated? And if so, can you give examples of specific policies you would enact?
Sure. So I've spent the past 10 years really sitting in these jails with these men and women. There's not as many women, but they're there, and their facility, let me just tell you this, I spend about 2 hours each time I go and visit, and that's about as much as I can handle. It's cold, it's uncomfortable, they hike the prices on women's sanitary needs, and they can't afford to be cleanly. There's major problems, and there needs to be a major overhaul. We've got to start talking about rehabilitation as opposed to retribution and punishing these people. It's sickening.
An ACLU survey here in Senate District 27 shows that only 15% of primary voters want state lawmakers to make accessing abortion more difficult. Knowing that the majority of your constituents are in support of expanding access to abortion, how will you fight for reproductive rights in the notoriously anti-abortion Texas Senate?
Yeah, so I think it's a misinformation where people say, well, you know, here in the Valley, we're very conservative. But according to the numbers, we're not. People are there, people are recognizing that this access to healthcare and this access to reproductive rights, including abortion, isn't necessary. The problem is that the women that can't go here go across to Mexico and get butchered. We send them back, and do they all survive it? I don't think so. So what needs to happen? We've got to have a senator in here who will fight for it. Now, this is the thing, is that all of our senators and state reps from here on down, about 14 of them, are all men. And if you remember what the notorious RBG said, she said there should be no decisions made where a woman is not present. Now, I've got 3 kids, and all of you that have, thank you. All of you in here that have been pregnant at one time or another know that initial fear of shock. When you find out you're pregnant, even if you're prepared, it's shocking. So we need to be able to facilitate women in their own decisions and cut that stigma, because it's time, guys.
Thank you. And now we're going to introduce another local partner, Frontera Fund, to ask the next question.
Good evening. I'm Catherine Torres. I'm on the board of directors of Frontera Fund. We're the Rio Grande Valley's sole abortion fund, helping people pay for practical support and actual procedure care and ultrasound care, new thing we're doing. So, in late September 1977, Henry Hyde passed and implemented the Hyde Amendment, which did not allow Medicaid coverage of abortion services. Henry Hyde's motives for this amendment were the closest he could get to banning abortion after 1973's Supreme Court landmark decision, Roe v. Wade. Realistically, all this did was make accessing abortion much more dangerous. Because of the Hyde Amendment, McAllen native and student teacher Rosie Jimenez was turned away when seeking abortion care from her doctor. She then received an unsafe abortion and contracted an infection from unsanitary tools used. On October 3rd, 1977, Rosie Jimenez passed away from sepsis at McAllen General Hospital and was the first reported death before many as a result of the Hyde Amendment. I'm sharing her story with you today because her story resonates with several low-income people of color across the Rio Grande Valley who are in need of abortion care, but cannot access it. As Senator for District 27 and a voice for your constituents, will you take proactive measures to expand Medicaid in the state of Texas to include abortion coverage? And if so, what are your plans to make abortion care more accessible?
Thank you. Yeah, the answer in a nutshell is 100% yes. And I'm familiar with Rosie Jimenez, and you know, the whole stigma about abortion, well, she must have been this or that to have to do that. Rosie Jimenez was already a mom, a single mom, who had to make a decision because she didn't have the funds to have a second child. So regarding that other question about stigma, we got to break the stigma, and that's how we tell these women's stories. And that's her story. She wasn't, you know, some random woman on the streets. She was a woman who really had to make a decision. Even if she was a random woman on the streets, everybody deserves to make their own choices regardless of what the background is, right? So the way that you expand it is you get in there and you fight like hell. You don't get in there and keep the status quo. We need somebody in there who goes in there and fights like hell and doesn't take no for an answer.
Thank you. Now that concludes this portion of the program. I'm now going to invite all the candidates back on stage for our next session, which is the lightning round. The rules of the lightning round are as follows. The candidates will have only an opportunity to say yes or no to each question, and the moderators will take turns asking them to all the candidates at the same time. We will then give a chance at the end of the lightning round to allow each candidate 1 minute to elaborate or explain their answers if they so choose. Okay. And as you can see, they will hold up cards saying yes or no for each question. Okay, they have them over there. Okay, have a seat. Okay, again, the rules as a reminder.
What's going on? What happened?
Okay, again, we will have 30 minutes for each 30 seconds for each question, and we're going to move rather quickly, hence the name lightning round. Okay, question number 1. Is the audience ready? All right. Will you vocally oppose the expansion of a border wall?
Will you oppose creation of a volunteer border force comprised of local law enforcement?
Will you oppose state funding maintaining the buildup of DPS and the National Guard at the border?
Do you believe that people should have the right to receive an abortion as part of comprehensive reproductive health care?
Do you support efforts to repeal Senate Bill 4 and support legislation that limits Senate Bill 4's reach and impact?
Do you support reducing the current inappropriately harsh penalties for possession of small amounts of drugs?
Will you support legislation ending secured cash bail?
Would you oppose legislation that makes abortion and other reproductive health care harder to access?
Would you oppose any similar legislation that treats the marriages of opposite-sex couples different from same-sex couples and vice versa?
Would you support measures to make registering to vote and voting easier for eligible voters?
Will you support measures to stop gerrymandering, such as through the creation of an independent redistricting commission for the state of Texas?
Will you support proposals to allow people to vote upon release from prison?
And the final question for the lightning round is, will you oppose any legislation that targets gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, or non-binary people with discrimination in employment, education, housing, or in public spaces, including any so-called bathroom bill legislation?
Vanessa, if you have any follow-up, you have 1 minute.
Actually, I did. I wrote them down. I just think it's really strange. I just wanted to mention Senate Bill 4. You know, back when I was running for District 15, I met with a lot of DPS troopers. They've been down here already for 4 years like this. A lot of those folks, they're not from here. They had to come down from up north. They don't want to be down here, and they don't see the people I spoke to. And of course, I'm not going to say their names, but they don't see a reason to be down here. They're down here because their higher powers are the ones that place them down here. But we have federal people dealing with those federal issues, and I feel strongly that those monies that can be allocated for other things in their state when we already have law enforcement in different levels, Border Patrol, all of those law enforcement agencies around this area. Why do we need to take away not only manpower, but resources from our local government when that's federal spillover issues? Those are federal issues.
Miss, time's up. Ruben, if you have any follow-up, you have 1 minute.
Yeah, you know, I think it's real telling that we have an empty seat right here. I think for years, the voice of the Valley has been robbed by this state senator. All of you in this room, and those of you that are watching on Facebook Live, or those of you that are going to watch this recorded session at some other time, all of us up here have a lot of faith that you're going to do the right thing this election season. But I think it's time that we reclaim our voice. I think it's time that you send a Democrat who is going to do the right thing for Texans in this area. I think it's time that we elect a Democrat who's going to focus on the needs of our region rather than polarize this region. When Dan Patrick needs a vote in the name of bipartisanship, who does he pick up the phone and call? Eddie Lucio. And what does he do? He votes with him. As soon as we announced our candidacy, what did Eddie Lucio do? He called Dan Patrick, brought him down here for a series of town halls and fundraising events. We need a candidate, we need a representative.
Time's up, please. Thank you. And Sarah, you have 1 minute for follow-up.
All right. Yeah, so look, my number one concern really is centered around the Equal Protection Clause, the 14th Amendment of our U.S. Constitution, right? That trumps all of the state laws. And under that law, it is to ensure that every person is treated fairly under the law. And what's been happening these past 28 years is our legislators are not familiar with the 14th Amendment and they trample all over us. And it's time that we get somebody in there that can say, wait a minute, you need to hold up, because not only is this just wrong, but it's illegal. We've got to stop it.
Okay, now we're to the next segment, and it's the audience questions. We will now take note cards with the questions.
And also, I'm sorry, one note. Because Senator Lucio is not in attendance, we wanted to give our partners at the LGBTQ plus task force an opportunity to ask their question to the candidates in attendance.
And again, as a reminder, this was the question that we were going to ask Senator Lucio, but because he is not here, this question will be directed to all three candidates.
Good evening, candidates. I know this question was asked to Ruben earlier, but this is for Vanessa and Sarah to answer and expand upon. During the 2017 legislative session, the current senator for our district came out as the only Democrat to support Senate Bill 6, a hateful bill that put a target on the trans community and, according to the Texas Tribune, quote, would require trans people to use the bathroom in public schools, government buildings, and public universities that matches their biological sex. This legislation would also reverse local non-discrimination ordinances that let transgender people use the bathroom that corresponds with their gender identity. This past December 2019, the City of Brownsville Commission, the City of Brownsville, which is the biggest city within District 27, unanimously voted yes to the creation of an official LGBTQ task force in order to address discrimination against our community and potentially put forward an NDO to be considered by the city in order to protect the community against discrimination, homophobia, and transphobia. If the City of Brownsville can support LGBTQ plus people, how can we ensure that the next senator for our district will actually listen to their constituents and support the community at the state level as well?
One of the reasons that I started my activism was 4 years ago. My son was being bullied. He's in the audience now. He's already 16. He was 11 at the time. He was being bullied on the basis of the students thinking that he was gay. So they were gay bashing him. I have had a strong connection to the LGBT community ever since I was young. I knew about the gay cancer, which we turned out it's AIDS. And it evolved into the right way to describe it. But through all that, the LGBT community has been one of the most marginalized communities, and they've been the least listened to. You can make sure that if I'm senator, regardless of my political affiliation, regardless of my party, my entire life, all my choices, and all my actions will demonstrate to you that if I become your senator, I'll probably be the loudest one regarding any issue, but including all the rights for LGBTQ folks.
You know, I had an opportunity to talk about this a few minutes ago, but what I failed to mention when we talked about what happened in 2017 is that same year, and think about this for a second, that same year, the Hidalgo Democratic Party did a vote of no confidence against our current Texas Senator, Eddie Lucio. They took a position against a sitting Democrat. That same year, the Texas Young Democrats did the same thing at their state convention. Young people in the state, young Democrats did this. You know, we need to stop this practice of marginalizing any community. People should live the life that they're meant to live, the life that they want to live. So long as they're being productive and they're good, outstanding citizens in our community, they should be able to do whatever the hell they want with their lives. And Texas shouldn't get in the way of that. That's not the Texas that I want for my kids, and I'm sure that's not the Texas you want for yours. And so we're up here, we're fighting because we know that it's this change that is needed. We know that Eddie Lucio is the single biggest threat to the LGBTQ community in the state of Texas on the Democratic side, bar none. He is the single biggest threat to women's rights on the Democratic side.
Thank you.
Bar none.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. You know, this task force that you just mentioned is excellent. It's awesome, but it's just the first step, right? There's a lot more that needs to be done. And so that's where I come in, is with the plan, right? The plan is you start with the task force. What else do we need to do? Do you know here in Texas, there's still conversion therapy happening? Yeah, that's gotta go. What else needs to happen? There's state grants that are given all over the state of Texas. And if we can make it a sure thing that you can only get a grant if these grants are LGBTQ friendly and non-discriminatory, then that's step 2. What else can we do? We got to protect our LGBTQ youth. They're 5 times more prevalent to suicide attempts than kids that are not LGBTQ. So we've got to get education out there. We've got to get it started. Task force is great, but we need to put more money within the entire state of investigating. We need to investigate where these discriminatory actions are happening and penalize these groups and penalize these people. Yeah. So we've got a lot to do. We're getting there, and we will get there. But we need someone with a plan that can actually carry it through.
Thank you. And now we go to the audience questions. These were randomly chosen from the audience and their submissions. We only have time for 5 of these questions, and we're going to take turns asking these questions. So the first question to each of the candidates: what can be done to restrict, reduce, or eliminate charter schools?
Improve our public education system. Improve our schools to such a degree that parents don't think that they need to send their children to an alternative school. Improve our current public education system so that we won't lose students and teachers. Do you know how much faculty we've lost from local public schools to charter schools? And a lot of people that are really against, well, it's anti-progressive policy. Instead of fixing the problem that's causing the charter schools to thrive, instead of doing that, they're giving incentives to charter schools. That doesn't give Texas an incentive to fix the existing public schools. So that's my answer.
So the first thing we need to do is we need to put a moratorium on the expansion of new charters in this state. Those of you that live in Brownsville, you understand what has happened just here. Just last year, our board made a decision to close several campuses because of the overproliferation of charter schools. And that's happening because of legislation that our current state senator, who should be sitting right there, has voted for. He's voted to allow a charter school to leverage the permanent school fund the way any voting school district, any tax-paying entity, it's public school district, to go and access a bond. But their bond, if we want a bond, they have to come to the voters. We have to go to the ballot box and vote for a bond. If a charter school wants to expand, all they got to do is write a letter to the Commissioner of Education, Mike Morath, say, hey, we want to build 10 new schools. It's going to cost us $250 million. Do we have your blessing? Well, what do you think a Republican-appointed Commissioner of Education who's charter-friendly is going to say? Yes. So boom, overnight, $250 million sold. Guess what? Now you've got money for schools. But it's worse than that. If I take my son who's in 5th grade here at Iturria Elementary and I put him in any of the local charters in Brownsville, he's worth almost $1,000 more than he is in a traditional public school. Despite the fact that you and I pay taxes in our school district. The state of Texas funds 100% of the child in a charter school versus you and I who pay 50% of that child with our tax base.
Thank you.
So we need to make these changes.
Yeah, so plain and simple, we need to cut their funding, right? So let me just kind of break it down. This is how it works. We have a legislator, right? And he's a private consultant for the charter schools. So the charter schools are putting money into his pocket. All right, so then when it's time to write legislation, who am I writing legislation for? Is it for you? or is it for these people that are putting money in my pocket? Right, so step one is to cut the funding to the charter schools. If they want to exist, wonderful, but they've got to function like a corporation, because that's really what they are, and they can make their own money, collect their funds however they choose to do so. Step two, which is more of a basic level sort of my idea, is we've got to stop this self-serving, backhanded sort of compadre system where, okay, you're giving me a check, so I'm going to write legislation for you. Step two, done.
And now the second audience question, and just as a reminder, these are randomly selected from the audience, and you have 30 seconds to respond. Do you support the full legalization of marijuana, both medical and recreational use?
Yes, absolutely yes, 100% yes. It should have never been prohibited in the first place. One of the things on my platform, and it has not been released, is the release of all non-violent drug offenders from TDCJ ASAP, especially if those non-violent offenses were connected to crimes involving marijuana. We have, I can't go on. Go to my page and you'll know exactly why I'm all about legalization. For the full plant, for the entire plant. The entire plant.
Thank you.
So yes, I think we should legalize marijuana, and we should take it a step further. Anybody who's in jail for a small amount of marijuana, we should release them, and we should expunge records going back years. I think this is long overdue. This hurts communities where you have high minority populations, and this is something that should have happened. Why it hasn't? Well, we can tell you he's not here, because he doesn't fight. He doesn't fight for you. You've lost your voice, and we have an opportunity to reclaim that.
Look, we have thousands and thousands of people dying each day because of opioid abuse. We have thousands of people dying each day because they're hooked to these medications that Big Pharma pushes down their throat. We have people dying each day because of PTSD and they can't get through their symptoms without getting hooked to some sort of opioid. So if marijuana is the thing that keeps people alive, we should probably keep them alive. Yeah.
The next question. How would you help support funding to abortion providers and their affiliates when this past decade has drastically cut funding to trusted healthcare providers?
Can you repeat that question?
Yes, I'm going to repeat the question. How would you help support funding to abortion providers and their affiliates when this past decade has drastically cut funding to trusted healthcare providers?
You rearrange the budget, period. You're gonna tell me that in Texas there's not some things that we are spending money on that perhaps we shouldn't? Are you kidding me? It's all about rearranging the budget. That's what it's about. There's money. When you are a person and you know that, hey, something's happening in your life, you're gonna have to cut back or rearrange your funding, that's what you do at the state level as well. That's my answer.
I think the first thing we do is we expand Medicaid. These almost $10 billion that have been left on the table, as I was telling y'all before, 70% of the indigent care fund is used between Cameron and Hidalgo County. 91% of the voters that elect this senator in Senate District 27 come from these two counties. If we expand and take advantage of these resources and allow for these resources to be used for safe and legal access for women, that's one pot of cash that we can take advantage of all day long.
Okay, so back in 2011, I think it was like $52 million or something was cut from women's healthcare, right? And that's why all the clinics that we had down here disappeared. If you need to go, and you in the circumstance where you have to go see Planned Parenthood, you've got to travel to a big metroplex or a big city. I think the closest place is McAllen, is that right? But long story short, yeah, the money's there. It's just where did it go? Yeah.
The next audience question. If elected, how often would you hold community town halls or other community events in which to hear from your constituents?
Ever since I ran for office in 2016, I was the first politician in the entire valley to start talking about town hall meetings. I got that from Bernie Sanders. because I was one of the first Bernie supporters, one of the strongest Bernie supporters. And I will always, I have been to this day connected to my people. I will continue that, whatever seat I hold.
You know, when I ran for the Board of Education, one of the things I told the community when I went out there is that we need to stop making decisions from the boardroom in Austin to the classroom in Texas. That if we want to make good education policy, we need to go to our classroom teachers. We need to go into our schools and ask them. If we make policy from the classroom to the boardroom, we're going to give you what you want. And as your senator, I'll take that same philosophy and we're going to go to your communities. We're going to ask you, what can we do for you? How can we make your life better in this state? And that's the approach that I would take as your senator.
Town halls are a fantastic idea, but I think we can take it further and do roundtables. So you ladies in front probably have some special interests that I know nothing about. If we sit down and you actually pen in hand help me write legislation for stuff that you know more about, then I guarantee that piece of legislation is going to be better with you two there as opposed to just me.
All right, we're on the last question from the audience. Again, these were randomly selected, and you have 30 seconds to answer it. And this one is of particular interest to the Rio Grande Valley. As a state senator, how will you deal with the expansion of the oil and gas industry, which has caused air pollution, water pollution, trying to read this, explosions and leaks, and in speeding up climate change with methane leaks and carbon dioxide emissions?
There is nobody on this panel or running for this seat that has been about environmental pollution. I started talking about this between my 2nd and 3rd grade year. I read Rachel Carson's Silent Spring. Since that age, I knew. That's why I got my biology degree. So how are we going to do it? We're going to make sure that we have renewable energies. We need to make sure that we transition Texas away from fossil fuels, that we need to have something in place in order to substitute it with. And it will be a transition. It won't be from one day to the next.
Thank you.
You know, I think one of the things we need to work on is the expansion of renewable energy. We need to have more wind and solar programs. I mean, to the point where what we're working on right now on the Texas Board of Education is creating an entire career and technology pathway for wind and solar, which has never happened in the state of Texas. And we're beginning to develop that now. Those conversations took place last year on the Board of Education. And in a couple of years to come, you're going to see this more mainstream being taught in Texas high schools.
Thank you.
And as it does, you're going to see this come to fruition in the state of Texas.
I'd like to get you guys, if you would, to imagine a line with me, okay? This is our line of pollution. Beneath this line is the area of where you can stay legally regarding the pollution to not get in trouble. Above this line means, whoa, 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 too much pollution, we gotta cut it back, we're gonna penalize you. We're here, there's no penalties. We've gotta hold people true to that line. These penalties, we gotta fight this LNG thing like hell until we get something done.
Now, this concludes the audience question portion, and we want to thank the candidates for appearing. At this time, we will ask the candidates to please return to your seats. Thank you very much. And now, Maria Cordero and Vicente Martinez. Here we go. Maria.
Hello. Thank you, everyone, for being patient with us. Thank you so much for coming.
Les queremos agradecer infinitamente su presencia a este foro que es tan importante. Esperamos que la información que haya recibido les sirva para ampliar su vista al más del perfil de nuestro futuro o nuestro siguiente senador en el distrito número 27 y que hagan llegar su voz en la siguiente participación cívica, en las siguientes votaciones y que logremos tener un Texas más justo para todos.
I just want to thank you. Thank you so much for showing up. Thank you for coming. As I mentioned earlier, this is your first step of being civically engaged and to use your voices as well as to know the platforms of different candidates who are supposed to be for us, by us, and vote for ourselves to make sure that nobody's rights are violated, but for a while, for a long time, over and over again throughout the state and federal, state level, city level, they put their issues as well as what they care about in the forefront rather than what the community needs. So thank you so much for coming, as well as don't forget to tweet at Lucio. If you have any questions, tweet at Lucio. Hashtag Rights for All is a hashtag that we're using, as well as we have voter pledge cards outside where we can send you put why you'd like to vote, give us your information. We'll keep you updated on what's going on, as well as we mail it back to you once the election is coming up. Thank you so much for coming. And go vote. Before all, if there's some friends or families that weren't able to make it, go to our Facebook page. We did a live stream, and it's going to be safe for you all. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, everyone.
Please do the voter pledge cards outside. Wait, let's huh? Okay. As well as engage with the candidates outside, please. The candidates will be outside answering questions.
Here, put this down so we can take it.
Oh yeah, will you take a picture, please? Thank you. This guy, he's gonna take a picture.